In yesterday's video, we went over conditions to confirm a breakdown for Bitcoin and all markets essentially. And in today's video, seeing as we have now had that, where is this move likely to end and when more importantly? In fact, we'll answer the question of when right off the bat here. So let's just jump right into it, starting off with a nice little chart of Bitcoin. I brought this up very briefly yesterday, but I want to go a little bit more into it today. And that is going to be focused, of course, on this Fibonacci time extension anchored from the ultimate high of November 2021 to the ultimate low of November 2022. And we found that this is very well matched up with a lot of the major pivots on Bitcoin, in many cases forming local highs and also in some other cases forming some actual breakouts and local lows. The key point to take away from something like this isn't necessarily that when we get one of these dates is going to be a higher or low. It's just we know that that's going to be a turning point. And of course, we have a date coming up right here. And this is essentially where I would say, hey, things are likely to continue in their current direction until a little bit closer to this date. Maybe it's a little bit before, maybe it's a little bit after, but somewhere around this date is what would make sense. And that would be the 382 Fibonacci time extension here, and that would essentially be the last week of this month. So, coming into the last week of this month, I would still be generally angled towards the downside. I'd still be generally expecting trend to continue, and well, as of right now, the trend is to the downside, and the trend might not be your friend, but you can let it be. Of course, you can always let it be, and if and when we do, well, not if we get to this date, when we get to this date, I would be looking for a bit of a counter move most likely, as these have generally aligned with counter moves. So it would not necessarily imply that it's going to be 100% the ultimate low for Bitcoin and it's just up only from there, but probably a nice pivot. And even in the event of it not producing a major macro reversal, it could still produce a pretty nice bounce for sure. I mean, it's no secret that crypto or, well, anything really can bounce significantly during bear markets. In fact, that's what really makes bear markets quite difficult, because you get these fucking monumental bounces that eventually roll over. So it makes you think that things are done, and then they're not. Anyways, moving on from there, I do want to acknowledge that the price action pivot to maintain bearish buys is still the same as yesterday, about just over $85,000 on a daily closing basis. That would be for spot price action. Of course, CME, which I do put more weight on and I do find is just better to go for in terms of signals, would be pivoted at just under $86,000. Again, that would be on a closing basis. I'm waiting for this pivot to move down, but obviously that won't move down until we get another short-term bounce followed by another lower high in this case. So still, if you're looking for a reversal, it's going to take its time, I suspect. Now, lower term timeframes can bounce. Obviously, I mean, we're seeing a little bit of a bounce right now. That's not anything super crazy, but I do believe, or if memory serves me correctly, there is, a very small amount of bullish divergence here on the 4-hour time frame. You can see that the low from Monday versus the low of this morning is about $20 lower, $20 lower on the close. Yeah, this one closed 75.54. This one closed 75.20. And we are seeing higher lows on our side. So and there we go. It's like caretaker just read my fucking mind. Can we see a short-term bounce? Sure. But in the short term, all bounces are irrelevant in terms of reversing trend as long as even a full hour is closing below about $80,000. So if you're looking for a short-term pivot, that would be it in this case. Anyways, let's now answer the question of where is this downside move likely to find its resting place, or at least, a likely place of major bounce. And so we've already gone over the date. That would be the last week of this month. And that can be 5 days before the end of this month and maybe 5 days, after the end of this month. But the other thing that I'd be keeping an eye on is something that is about to be confirmed. And I do think that this is a formality, but technically it is not confirmed until tomorrow's closure. But the 10-day time frame, we're seeing two major moving averages cross here. That would be the red and the yellow, the red 5 EMA and the yellow 21 EMA. These are crossing, and it will be confirmed upon tomorrow night's closure. I have a very difficult time seeing that this does not get confirmed. I mean, it would imply that Bitcoin needs to rally probably back above 85 to 86,000 bucks between now and tomorrow night's closure. Assuming that that doesn't happen, anytime that we've seen this cross, we have seen a minimum test to the green moving average, the 55 EMA. So you can see an example over here. This was from the 2021 market cycle. You can see that price spent a lot of time basing between these two major moving averages as well. And again, later on when things actually fully broke down here, again, crossing, and then boom, you get a minimum test down to that 55, bounces again, and then boom, another break. Same thing over here. This one obviously tested all in one go, as does this one too, but condition met yet again. Same thing over here. This one takes a while to officially test the 55, but once those two major moving averages cross, it was set in motion there. And then, of course, if we go back to the past couple iterations here, you see that this one happens, I guess, one closure after. This one happens a few. And other than that, oh yes, and we have one last iteration over here. This one happening very, very early on in Bitcoin's history. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that Bitcoin is very likely to see somewhere close to that green moving average. Right now, that is 69,550. Can we get wicks below? Sure. Can it maybe get slightly front run from the top? Also sure, but that would still imply a little bit lower before the next potential major bounce region. And from there, again, bounce would need to reclaim whatever the most recent price action pivot was for a lower high in this case, as we are in a downtrend. So it's going to take some time. Again, I wouldn't get too wrapped up in short-term bounces, even though that they can be very violent and very impressive percentage-wise, but it's going to take a little bit of patience here, I suspect. Anyways, on top of this, the other concerning things on the higher term timeframes remain in place. All higher term timeframes, stochastic momentum continues to the downside here. Daily continues down as long as Bitcoin's closing on CME below 83,700 almost. 2-day timeframe freshly crossing down, playing out a trendline regression as well. Let me actually, I didn't draw it in there, but you can visualize it from these highs. That would be the December highs versus the January highs, and then more recently the April highs. And that continues down as long as Bitcoin's below 83,600. In fact, that's the same as the daily, and that one is closing tonight as well. The 3-day time frame, and by the way, the 2-day time frame is having a silver cross to the downside as well. So very difficult to be bullish as long as that condition is met. 3-day time frame, same thing, freshly crossing down, shows downside momentum as long as Bitcoin's below 80,350. Closing tomorrow night. 5-day time frame is also going to be down. If we can load it up, let's see it right here. This one getting into the critical zone. So I do think you're going to see a pretty damn big bounce for Bitcoin relatively soon after it goes a bit lower. Maybe it's the low. Like we'll see how low things come. But this one showing downside as long as Bitcoin's below 83,350. So we see a lot of things around 83 pivoted there. So I would go as far to say 83 is probably a very good area to be watching, even though technically the current price action pivot is officially at 85 or 86, depending upon which exchange that you're on. 10-day time frame also coming down here hard as long as Bitcoin's below 105. The bi-weekly time frame, which is closing at the end of this week, also coming down as long as Bitcoin's below 105. And the monthly, of course, as we already know, has been down for a while on bearish divergence as long as Bitcoin's below 107. So, when I see all of these higher term timeframes positioned in the same direction as we have been stating for the past month and a half now, I'm gonna err towards bearishness. I'm just gonna err towards bearishness. Yes, there was some hopium before, but hopium is called hopium for a reason because it's fucking hopium. You're praying and hoping. Anyways. I do want to also acknowledge a major chart that I don't think that we spoke about yesterday. It might have been some time since we actually spoke about it, but that would be the Tether dominance chart here. Tether dominance, essentially representing stablecoin dominance, as it is still the major player. And yes, we can look at the full stablecoin dominance as well, which is essentially the same chart as this, except this one has more history. This one is looking like it's in a period of consolidation and potential reversal from this prior downtrend. This is a monthly time frame right here. You can see that Tether dominance is already at the prior high. And if it can close above this area, or what is this, 580 essentially, by the end of this month, that will as far as I'm concerned, confirm the beginnings of a major monthly reversal that's going to be supported by the monthly stochastic momentum here, which is having bullish divergence plus continuing up. I mean, this is a very high term time frame, so that definitely matters. Quarterly also looking, is this a bullish engulfing? No, it's not a bullish engulfing, but nearly. But anyways, the quarterly also looking like it wants to take a leg up here. So is this a base? And we see all of our bear market lows, all of our bull market highs coming in around these major long-term bases. This was your 2021 high. This was your 2017 high. I do have to kind of consider, or it's not that I consider that, it's like that's a very well possibility here. If things were going to top out for Tether dominance, I believe we would have seen it below the 200 simple moving average on the weekly time frame here. But I guess if you want a point, like a counterpoint of failure for expecting this thing to reverse back onto the downside, which I don't think is going to happen, but hey, it's always possible, that we'd have to see a weekly closure basically below this week's low. But for right now, you're probably going to get a consolidation around this region just by the sheer fact of it retesting the prior high. But this looks like it really does want to confirm like a real reversal here. But I suppose time will tell. Time will tell as always. On top of this, I wanted to acknowledge this indicator that we've been referencing for the past few videos here as well. And by the way, if you find this content valuable, consider liking and subscribing. It gets these videos into your inbox at the proper right time because, it is a bit time sensitive. We're actually doing this one live on Twitter right now, and I'll continue to likely do this as well. It won't be like a live stream on Twitter, but it'll be like just kind of, live while I record and hang out. And then we'll have our weekly live streams on YouTube at the usual times. But anyways, back onto topic here. I wanted to, yes, where was it? It was the 5-day time frame. Yeah, the 5-day time frame we mapped out from yesterday's video that that we've seen all of the macro lows for this current bull cycle along this area right here. Along this area right here on the 5-day oscillator, which I don't really have like a good name for it just yet. I'm still kind of working on it, I suppose. But looking at this here, we're about to see, assuming that Bitcoin doesn't, really have a big move to the upside by the next closure, which is tomorrow night, we are going to see this level break, which would break for the first time during this whole bull market. So I'd look at that as another indication that things, are switching around here. On top of that, we can of course reference the 5-day HP to RO, which we were looking at over here. This one also lower than what we've seen during this whole bull market as well. I think that hopium fades on this one too. It's given us an indication that something new is happening. There is a real shift for the long term here. And on top of that, when we put on the HPDR bands, we can see that price is still, price is hanging around the 61.8 level. If it starts to close below there by, again, tomorrow night's end of period, I do have to look for it to come down a little bit lower. That would be somewhere around the 78.6 level here, which would be very close actually to that 10-day target that we looked at earlier for the 5 versus 21 EMA cross. And that would be very low 70s here, very low 70s. That range will change around when we get the new open. So maybe it goes up a little bit, maybe it goes down a little bit, but should hang somewhere around there, I suspect. So yeah, these things are starting to indicate, it really is a major change. On top of that, I want to again acknowledge that there's going to be bounces along the way. Short-term time frame bounces, are going to happen many times along the way, obviously. So these are not going to be like a straight down move. I'm talking about very high term time frame analysis here. Like, don't expect Bitcoin to fucking shit the bed completely today, tomorrow, probably not even this week, but into these next, I would say 3 weeks until the end of this month. It's a time to be more cautious. I do suspect that's when the downside, or the downside won't subside until, around the end of this month. But yeah, there are a few points of hopium, at least for like big bounces, tradable bounces as well. Despite Bitcoin coming down here, we've seen that the daily RSI is actually making a significantly higher low as of right now. I mean, it's going to be quite difficult to get it below that February low. I mean, you don't see it below this number very often. That's a 24.5 read right now at about 37. So you will have bullish divergence available to you the next time that Bitcoin prints a local low. I mean, maybe it tries one right here and tries another rally, but Again, downside bias as long as the downtrend is intact, and the downtrend is intact as long as Bitcoin is below this pivot right here at minimum. What else do we have? Yeah, in fact, this is where I'll end things off. I want to bring back the quantum wave bands. I've been getting a shit ton of questions about these, I guess for good reason. I mean, you know, it's quite noob friendly tool here. And how did it do in the past day of price action? Well, it actually caught this scalp pretty much perfectly here. Again, this is just a scalping strategy after all. It's not intended to catch like the big move, but more importantly, did not take a loss yesterday despite the very nasty price action, and then also had another small win, it looks like, early this morning as well. So again, you know, if you are if you're newer and you just want like a guideline as to when you have a bit of an edge, I think that this tool can be super fucking useful. I've actually been really impressed with it during this downtrend. You can try it out for 30 days as well for free with the code trial in all capitals. You can actually use that code for all of our, several of our offerings, like the Quant Prime, like Caretaker's full indicator suite, and the VMP, and then of course this as well. And actually, I'm going to be working on an AI chatbot for this as well, just because I see a lot of more new people using it, and you know, I think that would just be a major value add. So you can have like an assistant 24/7. And like I said, we're going to be raising the price at the end of this month, anyways, as we do add a few strategies to this. But that's enough shilling for one day. Back onto Bitcoin and wrapping this one up. Again, downside bias continues as long as Bitcoin is below the price action pivot of $85,000 on spot price action. Bounces along the way, of course, but maybe even in the short term here as well, as we did identify 4-hour time frame has a little bit of bullish divergence, and the daily is building it as well. But again, bounces during a downtrend have to be looking for a lower high first, and I would be very, 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 very defensive in this market until, again, we get to this date over here. That would be very late this month / very early next month of May. So, you know, bit of patience here is warranted, but things, you know, coming together, I suppose. So we shall see. We shall see yet again. And as always, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. In fact, this is just my opinion. That's all that it is. That's all this is. Just my opinion. At the end of the day, you can do whatever the fuck you'd like to do. And with that said, I'd like to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.